Welcome to Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Today, we're delighted to have our guest, Ray Flores, who is the founder of Exponential Life. Kristen, thank you for joining us today. And for viewers or listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and provide us with a bit of insights on your background and experiences before we dive into it?
Thanks for having me, Bob.
My pleasure.
I find it hard to explain the background because it's so confusing. But if I were to say it very, very quickly in a fast-forward way, I'm a guy who grew up on 4 different continents. This is my 4th
Love that.
continent. And have a very strange and sort of squiggly line of a biography, from being a child refugee all the way to being a pop star, entrepreneur, philanthropist, evangelist. So very professionally ADD, let's put it that way.
Well, I would call it very extremely well cultured.
I like that. I like that.
Yes.
I like your version more than mine.
Yes,
actually.
very well cultured and a people's person. You're a people's person.
That is
You
true.
traveled, you've seen many cultures,
Yes.
and unfortunately, some people talk in out of ignorance sometimes because they never been. Yeah, if you cannot afford it, it's all right, but don't speak out of ignorance and say this and that. You need to travel. I love traveling. I travel a lot, and I traveled a lot in the past, and it really kind of opens up your mind and widen your horizon and your vision. You see things differently.
I agree. Yep.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, interesting. Let's start with, your early experiences, I would say, shaped your passion for entrepreneurship and philanthropy. What was what was the early experiences that kind of gave you that shape of entrepreneurship and philanthropy?
I've thought about this a lot, obviously, because if you are to create a great life, you
Yeah.
have to be self-aware, and you have to be able to sort of retell your story over and over again in a way that is organic to you and actually beneficial, right?
Yes.
And I would say this. I would say the entrepreneurship piece is a very surprising connection that I make, but I think it's actually accurate. And that is, I went through so much instability, suffering, poverty, danger, things like that. So when you go through that over and over again and in rapid succession, eventually you reach a point where you understand that nothing is actually certain. So this sort of natural, organic, human sort of way of, hey, I'm looking for certainty, I'm looking for stability, sort of goes out the window after a while. And you can either choose to be permanently traumatized by it, and that's people land there, right, where you go, oh, nothing is certain, I'm going to be a victim, I'm going to just sort of shrink and be in survival mode all the time. Or you can say, if nothing is certain, then anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And my conclusion, after looking back and going, what is this chip that I have, right, is that that's what happened. At some point I said, well, if everything's sort of falling apart here and there, what's the point of building something in a conventional way? Why don't I do something because everything is possible then, and shoot for the stars? And that is essentially the almost like the virus of entrepreneurship, where you go, I think I'm going to try something new.
Would that make you, what you went through in the past, through your childhood to your adult life, would it make you appreciate life and appreciate things a lot more?
I think so, yeah. Uh-huh.
And you
And
become,
also be curious
yes.
about people.
Mm-hmm.
Be curious about people. I think that's the other thing is, I moved from Russia to Chile to Germany to Russia to Africa, back to Russia, Ukraine, the US. That's sort of my trajectory, right? So especially the first few countries, this is 4 countries by age 7.
Wow.
There is so much change in people, in language, in the way they speak, understand their body language, that you just to fit in, you become this very attentive learner of people. That's what I see, right? And like I learned 4 languages by age 9. You become incredibly
Wow.
attuned to learning on the fly, almost like through the pores of my being. You learn things like what do you mean by this?
So you
facial
hear a
expressions.
language,
Yeah.
You grasp it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can mimic. I can mimic tone, for example, or even energy. So,
Wow.
for example, if I'm doing a speaking thing, I go, why don't I listen to this speaker or that speaker? And all I need is 3 minutes of listening to this person, and I get the wavelength, the energy, and I just project that. So these are just small tricks of the trade.
I want to ask you to give me a sample of that by, let's say, I'm sure you heard of Tony Robbins.
Tony
If
Robbins,
you know, yes, you know how his energy is pretty.
Yeah, so exactly. And Tony Robbins is one
You
of the
cannot
people I
miss
go
it.
to. Yeah, because
Really?
Yeah, because basically I can be in a subdued tone, right? And I'm
Yes.
in that mode of,
Yes.
you're sort of normal, even keeled. Maybe even you make a lot of sense. But once you listen to Tony for 2 minutes, your volume goes right there, and your speed increases, and you start going, if you think this, you should think this, because this will take you there. And you're like, the very energy of the dynamic, the cadence changes, right?
Amazing.
And it's not, I'm not imitating him, but I'm definitely channeling his energy, right? So right now I'm going to go back to my normal self. My normal self is like this, right? But for a public speaking event, that normal self basically doesn't translate necessarily. So I need
So
to
you always
change
have to
energy
put more
levels.
emotion to it.
Yeah, more
emotions.
energy for sure. Yeah.
Yes. There's somebody who I did an interview with. He resides in Dubai. He's from the UK. His name is Darius Sodi. And look him up. He's in my LinkedIn, what do you call it, connection. I'll send you the link. So Darius speaks the same way, very calm. Very calm. I never seen him yelling and screaming and, giving that. No, he's just, this is his style, and it works. It seems very successful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the sign behind you. You have a post that says "Dream Big," and I cannot read what's under it. Dream big.
That's it.
a little
It's
blurry.
just dream big. Yeah.
Just dream big. I love it. Love it.
Dream big dreams, and that's a copy
Dream
of a
big dreams.
Banksy artwork.
Really?
So, and I just
Love
love
it.
that. And there's a boy, and he just wrote that, and he's just staring at the wall, and that I love that Banksy. So I got the print because of it.
Amazing. Christian, what motivated you to pursue master's degree in economics, and how did that help your career?
I was just going with, honestly, nothing motivated me. I was just going with the flow. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life.
Appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
Appreciate the honesty. This is
got-
real. This is what I call real.
Yeah, it's like all I wanted to do is music at the time, but
Yeah.
that was not an available profession, at least in my perception. It was like something that was completely removed from my reality. So I'm like, I'm sort of bored. I need to go to college. I'm gonna like literally point at like this thing I'm gonna do, and what happened is I hated it for the first probably 4 years.
Yeah.
And then year 4, it started making sense to me. And although I still went back to music after I graduated, it never went away. My passion for the economics is still with me, very much present. It's almost like one of the lenses that you use to see the world. And so I'm writing a book right now called 10, Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America, for example, right? And I'm looking at the American story through the lens of an immigrant, through the lens of sort of how societies are built, right? So it's not political. It's really more about the culture of hierarchies, dictatorships, oppressive regimes, and then freedom, that kind of thing. And I always insert in every chapter, I just can't help myself, economics, right? So it's really stayed with me tremendously for the rest of my life. My love for economics actually just grew, although I never worked in the field. And once I sort of became, my first success happened in music, it served me really well because I became a producer and a business owner and entrepreneur. So it sort of really, really helped. And I know so many musicians, who are just absolutely gifted, and they're absolutely broke all the time because they just never studied some of those principles.
Would you think, speaking of America and freedom, would you think that freedom is misinterpreted in America with the newer generations? I would say with the last 10, 20 years, totally misinterpreted.
I think to a degree, I think, yeah. And I think, I would say actually maybe underappreciated because people take it for granted that this is, you can feel safe, you can speak up, speak your opinion.
Yeah.
Your opinions freely. That is not normal in most of the world, actually. Like people have no idea that that is true. I think that's one thing. The other is freedom to choose is incredible here, and in most of the world is not. So when young people almost like squander that, I would say that would be misusing freedom, right? Because you're using your freedom to do nothing, to not contribute. Not a good idea, right? But I don't, honestly, we were all in that. Honestly, I was an idiot when I was in my early 20s. I squandered so much. It's just part of being young, I guess, squandering freedom.
I think in America, I would say one thing, that old school immigrant
Yeah.
appreciate America a lot more
Yeah. Oh,
than even
absolutely.
Americans. They
Well, that's why I'm
appreciate it
writing.
much
That's
more.
exactly why I'm writing the book. I'm just trying to educate Americans on
Yeah.
on just a different perspective. It's not their fault,
No.
because if everything you see, it's everything you know.
Yes.
And
And that's who you're going to become. And that's what's going to come out of your mind, your mouth, and that's what's going to be resonate in your brain. And you think this is it. This is what it is.
And especially if people start trash talking America, and you go, yeah, that's right, we're like the worst. Like those of us who come from, let's say, Marxist backgrounds, which is sort of my background, we go, what is wrong with you, right? Like it's you have no idea. Please, as you said, please go travel, right?
That's
Please
what I
go.
said in the beginning. Okay, more,
That's exactly
you
what
makes
you
you
said,
more cultured,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what it is. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it gives
absolutely.
you contrast.
Yes, yes. They, I think we too glued to our media. There's nothing wrong with media.
Yeah.
I would go with social media than
Me too.
scripted media. Yeah,
Yeah,
social
absolutely.
media is natural, is
Yeah.
is raw, and scripted media way far more scripted, based on the agenda and
Yeah,
somebody's
yeah,
benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christian, tell us about your impact of Ascend Mission Fund and the work you're doing in Mozambique and Ukraine. I know we're jumping everywhere, so because there's so much to talk about
Yeah,
that
that's right.
you've been through. So I'm trying to. I don't want to leave any subject out.
You asked earlier, childhood experiences formative in, let's say, philanthropy, which is what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating because I just never forgot. I lived in Mozambique from 7 to 14, which is a country in Africa, just north of South Africa, just south of Tanzania.
Yeah.
And it's still sort of close to the bottom, right? It's one of the poorest countries. And about half of the population lives under $2 a day, I think, still to this point, maybe a little bit less. It used to be 60%, now I think it's 40. So when you see that in person for formative years, it never goes away.
Wow.
So then after that, you see, for example, growing up in the Soviet Union, when it came back, the lack of opportunity, lack of freedom, lack of entrepreneurial freedom, which is another way to keep people down, right? Very, very limited. And then you see the American experience, and you see how the ecosystem, the mindset, the spirit of entrepreneurship, the opportunities, how profoundly they change people and children. You grow in, like an average person there's so many people in the United States where young people will dream, I want to be an entrepreneur. High proportion relative, let's say Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, I would say it's less people dreaming of being an entrepreneur than being a bureaucrat, for example. Why? Because they see the bureaucrats are the people who are stable, making money, et cetera, like people go work for the government.
In Eastern Europe.
In Eastern Europe, yeah, because
Yes.
it's very highly bureaucratic still. Not a ton of.
Even they're part of the European Union.
Yeah, because it's the post-Soviet cultural remnant, I would say.
It's still there, even in their infrastructure. I would say in their
I believe
cabinet,
so, yes.
government cabinet, still the old mentality is still there.
Culture is
And
very
industry.
sticky. Culture is very sticky, the way people think, right? And then you go to like a poor area in southern Philadelphia. The country is rich, but that area, there's 2 or 3 generations of broken homes that never got opportunities, no one went to college.
Wow.
The average person, for example, in some of those places, haven't left the 9-block radius of their neighborhood ever.
Yeah.
And they live in one of the richest countries in the world. So they need a mindset and a worldview change rather than a location change. But what if you're in Africa? You can't cross the street into the wealthy part of town and try to get a job or an apprenticeship. You live in the slums of Maputo. These are the kids that we're serving, and all they see is brokenness. Let's say 50% in some of those areas, 50% HIV/AIDS positive, no complete families, hardly at all, very close to zero. There's no access to computers at all, zero. I partner with a middle school with 1,800 kids. They have 3 computers for the whole school. 2 of them are used by teachers to grade papers and report. 1 of them is used by the government liaison. 0 are used by children, 0. So we take kids from there, the brightest, bring them into the academy, and every one of them has air conditioning, a meal every day, a uniform, a laptop, internet connection, English lessons, and more importantly, the character mentorship, where we say to them, you are valuable, you have opportunities, let us show you how you can become a normal, economically prosperous person, even in Africa. And if they're learning that at age 9, somebody's telling them, I believe in you. And they give you a computer. You give them a computer, you teach them some English language, you give them confidence. They create a new vision for their life.
Interesting. Let's talk a bit about the high performance coaching through Exponential Life. Give us some insights on it.
You know what? I just thought of this.
Please.
Bob. It's honestly the same thing as those poor kids. Let me explain what I mean. There's 2 factors in the way you prosper or not prosper. Your environment and your mindset.
Correct.
So your environment is everything. Origin story, what your parents told you, what they didn't tell you,
Would you say the environment is much stronger than the mindset?
It is, yeah, most of the time.
So it wins. It wins. Unfortunately.
Most of the time it wins, yeah. So,
I want to get back to this question. Please carry on.
When I coach somebody in high performance, these are extremely talented people, obviously.
Yes.
They want to be at the top of their professional, top of the industry. They want to crush it. But their environment, a lot of the times, is persistently bringing them down. And these are people that are, CXOs, executives, young or old, doesn't matter. Something in their mind tells them, who do you think you are? Trying to aim higher. People are going to find out any minute that you're a fraud.
Wow. You
are one of the statistics. Do you know what the market is like? Like, I had this conversation this morning with someone I was coaching. Like, my space is saturated. Austin is a highly desirable place, and there's a lot of people doing what I do. And I look at him and I go, you're thinking of yourself as a statistic, aren't you? You're just a number. Do you really believe that about yourself? You're just a number. He goes, no. I said, so in this, why do you think of yourself as 1% of the 100%, And we'll talk about basically how you could become a much more higher percent through understanding what the marketplace offers, how psychology works, how to build a reputation, how to raise mastery, how to wake up every morning and go from anxious or worried to creative and energized and focused, how to battle internal battles, how to build a life that is successful across 7 different dimensions, not just 1 or 2. So but the reason I tell you this is that essentially the same foundational dynamics that affect this kid under $2 a day in the slums of Mozambique is affecting a upper middle class person in their 30s trying to go up in their their space. It's mindset versus environment. Fundamentally, it's the same dynamics, right? So we teach them the skills on how your mindset can change your environment and not the other way around.
It's funny. That was my question when I said I'm going to get back to it. Like, what is the key, actually? What is the secret that a person needs to do to overrule the environment weight? Because it's like carrying, gym weights, and it's pulling you down. So how do you switch that around? Like, if it's taking you down, weighing you down, how do you use your mind to say, I want to pull myself out of that environment, out of that, that's influencing the way you think.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say a couple of things. One is like this, I'm going to tell you the thing that I tackle first, and that is when you wake up in the morning, where do you go? Your energy, your mind, your thoughts, right? Most people, this is across the board, go to a negative space of survival mode. I'm anxious, I'm behind. Am I going to be able to do this, this, and this, and this? And the first trick is to learn how to go from anxious and worried or concerned or always like maybe ultra aware of what might be coming in a negative way to go to calm, peaceful, and creative. Because if you're creative, you start creating new things, but just by definition.
Yeah.
You start thinking of new ideas, how to get the skills that you lack, how to get a new opportunity for promotion, how to optimize your business, how to create a product that is unique, that is more high value, all of those things, right? How to build or restore a relationship that you want to restore. It's creating something new. And you're biologically, biochemically unable to create something new if your whole system is in survival mode. And most of the time, people just are not even aware that they're in survival mode because that's all they know.
So what are you saying? You do need to come out of that survival mode.
Absolutely.
Because they might think it's good, but it's actually, it takes you down and it delays you.
Yeah.
And it holds you back
And it
from
trains
being
you.
creative and accomplishing and being innovative and
Exactly.
evolve. I see.
Because you're basically what you're doing is your environment and being in that state trains your brain. So the neural pathways that are carved, that are now riverbeds essentially for your thoughts. That's where the water goes. That's where the thinking goes, right? They're automatically in the survival mode stories, right? So you don't wake up in the morning and go, I am absolutely brilliant. I'm going to revolutionize my space or double my revenue of my department or my company. You don't go there. Why? But some people go there because they learn how to fix those neural pathways and the way you think, and that's their automatic place. So you're succeeding on autopilot or you're failing on autopilot. The question is, what in the autopilot needs fixing, and how do you do that?
Very interesting point of view.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I thought if you're in a survival mode, to survive, you start to get creative, and you start to find new ways and new paths for survival. But you're creating, let's say, financially, and let's not talk. I mean, survival mode could be you're in trouble, you're trying to get out of trouble, whatever the situation, family, emotional. But let's talk about financial, and wouldn't it give you more creative way to think?
I would say you can be more tactical, perhaps, because it's basically you don't go left, you go right. You know, you scrape by, you find ways to, let's say, lower your overhead or make an extra buck on the side. That is technically creative. But it's tactical, not strategic, right? So you're not really creating something new, finding a deeper, better way of doing anything. You're not projecting a long sort of arch to the future. You're not doing any of that. What you're doing is you're maneuvering, I would say. Maybe that's a good way to think of it.
You're an entrepreneur yourself, and I'm sure you faced quite a few challenges. What's some of the challenges, that you came across as an entrepreneur, and how do you overcame it?
There's many. I've failed quite a bit, actually. I would say, foundationally, what would I say it would be in order? Complacency is one, right? So, for example, I had a company that did music and music video production about 15 maybe years ago, 17 years ago. I started in Los Angeles. I moved to Austin, and I had that company with me. And it was doing so well because I found a niche that just worked, that I became very complacent. I was doing all the things. I was interested in this and this and this and this. But it was because it's very niche. The market that I was serving was so narrow that what I could have done when things were well is invest money in expanding into different markets where I can find other clients and de-risk the gig. And I didn't do that. I was like, hey, things are well. So you just sort of relax. And then that market specifically was so narrow, so specific, it sort of collapsed on me. And literally in 6 months, my company was gone. Like it dried up. The revenue dried up.
Wow.
It was terrible, right? It's just lack of foresight, right? And I think part of that, it's actually probably a good way to even bridge some of the other stuff that I recommend people do. And that's why when I coach people, I coach them in cohorts and one-on-one. Is that if you are leading a company, even if it's a small business, most of my businesses were not large businesses, they were small businesses, right? It's a small crew. I sort of focus on lifestyle and boutique things, and I'm not an enterprise kind of guy. I'm not interested in that, really. I'm a lifestyle kind of guy. So when you're doing that and you have a small team under you, you don't really have if you don't have guidance in people that are tracking you and giving you accountability, and people that see around corners that you don't see, you end up being stupid like I was, right? So ever since then, I have a very, very robust accountability cohort group of friends that are both, they love me, they advise me, they're better than me, they're smarter than me, they're in business for longer than me, and I just treasure them and I thank them all the time and I invest in them. But it took me like 12 years to build that core nucleus of friends, and they will keep me safe. So I'm not going to repeat, hopefully, the stupidity that I did, 15 years ago, because I have people saying, "What are you thinking?" Right? You're getting complacent, for example, right? So yeah, stuff like that. I would say another one is just fear. Fear really keeps you from aiming high, from experimenting. You don't do enough experimenting when you're in a stable situation. That's another one. So if I'm in a stable situation, I go, oh, this is going to work forever. No, it's not going to work forever. I would say if 10-15% of your effort should be failing consistently, small bits of failing, so that you can discover the one next thing that's going to work well.
Is that where it came from? If being stable is, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And
that's come from stability.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely wisdom to it, right? But it's not just that, because things shift, and that's what we forget. We think we hit this high, and we go, this is really great. Markets shift, situation shifts, economy shifts, your personnel shifts, the target the delivery, the competition, everything shifts. So if you're not dedicating 10-15% at least at the very minimum, not too much, because you want to sort of at least serve your clients well, to what else can work? How can we see how can we even break the system that we have to find vulnerabilities, for example, right? Things like that. It's sort of a healthy level of curiosity and risk taking, even when there's stability. I think that's a great move, and I definitely am guilty of not doing that a couple of times during my career, where I go, then you're blindsided surprised by a failure that you didn't expect.
Before we talk about faith and how faith really influenced your life in business, coaching, direction, the way you think, where were you born? Because you've been at a young age, up to 7 or 9 years old, to 4 different continents, to 4 different countries.
Yeah, so I was born in Moscow, Russia.
Yeah.
My mom's Russian, my dad's Chilean. So if you're watching this and not listening to it, I don't look Russian at all, right?
You're Latin. You're more Latin.
Latin, yeah.
Yes.
So we moved to Chile when I was 6 months old. And that's it. They wanted to stay there until there was a military coup. I was 5 years old, and my dad ended up in a concentration camp there, and we were refugees there in a UN refugee facility until we got asylum in Germany, basically. So that was sort of
how old were you? How long you stayed?
We stayed probably 6 months in a refugee facility until we got asylum in Germany, something like that. Yeah.
You could write a book about just being in a refugee camp for that 6 months. You could write a whole book on it.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, my first childhood memory is literally standing outside of the concentration camp, because they used the soccer stadiums for those, because you could put a lot of people there. And I was standing outside of it holding my mom's hand, and she's trying to pass food through like a soldier, one of the guards, to my dad. And that was literally my first childhood memory. I was 5 years old, and I think I was just scared. That's why it's sort of imprinted in my mind, right?
Unbelievable. And from Chile, you went to Germany,
but then back to Russia for a little bit, and then my dad got a contract in Africa, in Mozambique, and that's where I grew up. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about faith.
Oh.
And how influential it's been on your life, on your direction, on your thinking, and everything. And again, like anything else in life, it's being used through positivity and negativity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's used
Yeah,
in
both ways.
another.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I mean, through the history of humanity, it's been used both ways.
Yes. Yes.
I actually grew up a complete atheist, Marxist. Both my parents were. When we went back to Russia when I was 14 years old, everybody was an atheist. I didn't know anyone who was actually, religious in any way, shape, or form. And so that was sort of my baseline. And then eventually when I graduated from college, I started doing music. And I was so successful at it so quickly that a lot of the flaws that just came with a lack of, I would say, moral imprints from my parents because they were atheists, it became very obvious. So I started doing music. In about a year, I was on national television there. In about another year, I was literally one of the top pop stars in 15 countries across the former Soviet Union. Magazine covers, radio, TV, everything. Went from playing small clubs to playing sports arenas in like 3 years.
Amazing.
So that will play a trick on you, as you probably know, right? So you have a lot of music sort of stuff on your wall. So
Yes.
I know exactly. I know you know what I'm talking about then, right?
30 years in the business. Still in it.
Yeah, exactly. So it changes you. And especially if you're in your early 20s, it changes you a lot. And I honestly think that it really doesn't change you as much as it shows what's already there in an amplified way. And for me, the thing that sort of became my entry point into faith was that I come from 3 generations of broken homes. My parents got divorced. That was my biggest trauma. And I've seen like civil war, so all kinds of stuff, right? So that didn't traumatize me as much as the divorce of my parents.
Wow.
And so when I really wanted to build a family, and I literally sabotaged every relationship I had because I was terrified that the same thing that happened to my parents and then us would happen to me and the kids that I might or may not have. So I would just repeat the same pattern over and over and over again. Now, if you add to that a large percentage of teenage population of a country that has posters on their walls of you, that becomes even more tricky, right? Because now you start dating someone, you don't even know if they want you or they want the persona, right? The on-stage person.
Yeah.
So I was dating this girlfriend. She was like a runway model, which I thought that was sort of the thing that you're supposed to be doing when you're a pop star. And then we got pregnant. We had a child, and I was really a bad boyfriend. And she left, cut me off, broke my heart, right? And I was just depressed. And I meet this pastor. He's a Canadian guy, fascinating guy because he's the son of one of the richest people in Canada, and he like dropped everything and went to post-Soviet Russia to, build a church, which is an interest. It was to me, wow, interesting guy, right?
Yes.
So he invites me over for dinner with his family, and I look at his family and I see like just a different vibe from them.
Mm-hmm.
They're loving, they're gentle. There's something about them that's so magical. And I turn to the guy and I go, "How do I get what you have?" Quite literally, like those sort of my. And he goes, "I can teach you, if you are okay with reading the Bible with me." And I go, "Yeah, I mean, I don't like any of that stuff, but I'm desperate enough to actually agree." So, and what that gave me essentially through studying scriptures and through being mentored by someone who is wise, who has been in sort of the faith for 2 or 3 generations, is that they apparently, which I didn't know at the time, there is ancient wisdom that has survived for thousands of years, that was shaped by thousands of years of human experience, that can teach you almost like the moral law of the universe about things that never change, which is everything from money to romance to parenting to friendship to greed and to power, things that are foundationally human. And I was able to just enrich my life tremendously through practicing those things and learning those things. And now it overflows into all areas of life. So case in point, 3 generations of broken homes. I can't keep a girlfriend to save my life. Just a week ago, I celebrated 25 years of marriage.
Wow! Congratulations.
Of a very happy marriage, by the way.
Congratulations.
So that's the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, I was gonna say the choice of religion. Why didn't you choose a different, or this is the one that kind of came in your path?
It sort of clicked, yeah.
It clicked. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Actually did a lot of searching in New Age, Eastern philosophy, Buddhism. It's like sort of the normal salad bar of New Age. New Age is like is a salad bar. Hey, take what you want. Don't take what you don't want. So I tried that for a little bit, and maybe I just I was just not paying attention or being intentional. It just didn't work for me. It just didn't.
Yes. Let's talk about you're an investor for Excite Interactive and Skyscent. Skyscent, am I right?
Yes. Yeah, Skyscent. Yeah, Skyscent.
Yeah, Skyscent.
Like we invested in a few tech companies early stage.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Tell us, what's your story behind it? What's the involvement?
Oh,
besides being an investor,
it was not a huge deal. Honestly, I'm very, very excited. I love entrepreneurship, and I love tech, and I happened to stumble upon someone who became a really close friend of mine. His name is Brandon Nicely, and he's my business partner in Third Drive, which is essentially a combination of what I do and what he does. Like he is a Silicon Valley guy. He built $1 billion company in New York in telecom. Back in the day, he did all kinds of really cool. Like probably raised a couple $100 million for his startups in the '90s and beyond. And we became so close. And I was. I love learning, as you can probably imagine. Like my early learning probably stayed with me. So I just sort of attach myself to him, and I go, tell me everything about startups and tech and how does that work. And I was just his apprentice for a few. I still am in that. And so through him, I was able to get access to some deals that he was doing, and I was contributing to them. And we usually got involved on a strategy level on his side, and on my side, there's two dimensions. One is just marketing, communication, brand formation, and websites, video, things like that. And then team, because I happen to have, because I coach, I know people really well. So if people would listen, I would say, hey, you need a let's say a co-founder. You're not incomplete there. Your team is not good, or basically look at some of the stuff. How you see this is not going to help you succeed. So, for example, you will notice that tech startups, most of them are started by engineers. Engineers typically do not know how to communicate well. That's one thing. And also, a lot of the engineers are so cerebral that they're not relational. And you can't really build a very successful startup, especially early on, if you can't convince people to do things for you for cheap or for nothing. And to do it over the long haul, especially in the early stages when things get really, really hard. You have to be a people person. And if you're an engineer and you have that flat side, you need to figure out a way around that, basically. So there's a lot of de-risking and maximizing profit that can happen if you just know how to build a team. And that was sort of my piece in some of those ventures.
How do you balance, Christian, between your work, family, celebrating 25 years of happy marriage, healthy, happy marriage, and the music industry, and being an entrepreneur, and being a coach, being a leader, and helping others?
Delegate. That's one, right? And honestly, I think for me, my focus is not to make $1 billion. My focus is to live a full life, an exponential life. That's why I call it exponential life. Something that it's expansive, that it's multidimensional, that gives you a joy, a lifestyle impact, not at the expense of other things, And because of that, all of those operations that you mentioned, they're all relatively small. They're very nimble. We have a very good team that I love, who I invested a lot of time into training. And we're just efficient, And I don't chase $1 billion. I chase significance and impact and joy. And I think that's a good filter, so you don't get yourself in waters that you don't want to be in.
Less sacrificing of the important things in life.
Yeah.
Your health, your family, your love, your happiness. Most importantly, happiness is the biggest thing, because there's so much how should I say, unhappy people in a workspace, whether they're an entrepreneur or they work for a big corporation.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Mental health is becoming a big problem, and nobody's paying attention to it, especially in the corporate world, in the workspace, and it's affecting the family space and entrepreneurship space even more now, because you feel you weigh that entrepreneurial kind of mask, and because of the social pressure, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're a loser.
Yeah.
And if you're not an entrepreneur, you're worthless. You know, you can't do nothing. So you feel like you have to perform, and you have to. So that create mental issues. You know, unhappiness. You know.
I agree, and I mean, that's actually a big part of my coaching.
Yes.
High performance. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can really be a high performer unless you do it from the inside out, and you have
Yes.
this joy and happiness that you speak of, this peace, the creativity. You won't last as a high performer. You can be that
Yes.
for a fair short period of time. It's like a sprint, right?
You don't want to sprint. You want a marathon in life.
You want a marathon. You want to win the marathon. That's what
Yes.
you're doing.
Yes,
So
they-
exponential is about winning the marathon.
Yes.
It's about building something that is not only extraordinarily high level, but
Yeah.
it's also very sustainable and continues growing without massive dips and falls and catastrophic failures, basically. So that's exponential.
Christian, looking back at your journey and your path in life, what advice do you have for these upcoming entrepreneurs and also upcoming people who, younger generation, also they think they're entitled to everything? That entitlement thing that becomes, everybody wears it these days. Everybody have that attitude, I'm entitled.
Well, I mean, what I would say is, look, you will learn that you're not. And you can learn either the easy way of just listening to somebody, or you will learn it through getting kicked in the teeth by life. And the first way is better. So I would say that. And I think I have a friend, his name is Chip Conley. I actually interviewed him on my podcast. And he's one of the guys who joined the early Airbnb team and became one of the guys who really helped it grow. And he has an exceptional story that I think it's a great illustration for especially young entrepreneurs. Is the Brian Chesky, who is the founder, and his co-founders brought Chip Conley in, and they said, "We need an elder in our midst. We need wisdom. We know what we're doing when it comes to tech and hustle culture and all of those things. We definitely can't see around corners, and we need somebody like that." And they brought him in. In my mind, that is an exceptionally wise decision, and very few, especially in tech, very few people actually practice that. And I would say, if you're young, if you're starting something new, bring a modern day elder into your midst, someone who sees around corners, who can help you and speak into your character, and you will thank them because they will make you successful, happy, for a longer period of time, and they will probably help you avoid some major mistakes.
Interesting. What is next for Kristen? Any new goals? Anything we should be on the lookout for in the next, I would say, before the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025?
Well, I'm publishing this book. I'm in the
Yes.
final draft stages of publishing this book called "Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America," and it's
I like
sort
it.
of
I like the title.
Yeah,
I
and
like
the
the
subtitle is
title.
"A Love Letter from an Immigrant," right?
Wow.
And it's basically 10 chapters. That has
Yes.
illustrations. It's like a coffee table book, so it's beautifully designed. It has 10 chapters, 10 reasons, and a lot of quotes from notable people, everything from politicians to cultural icons and sports icons about that thing in the chapter. And it's basically weaving in my stories, some history of America, and into these very light reading and yet profound at the same time, a way of seeing just how tremendous and exceptional this country is. And it's just a positive view. It's not political at all. There's no endorsement of any party or of any candidate or anything like that. But then there's also there's a serious piece of it, right? The serious piece is a warning against sort of neo-Marxist ideas, because I know them from the inside out, and I can spot them a mile away, and they're everywhere in America today. So it's really freaky to me, or anyone who comes from that world, because we all see it like a mile away, and then an average American won't even recognize that it's that. And so there's that, and there's a lot about freedom and lack of freedom, about liberty, about how to protect it, that it's precious, and you can't take it for granted because it could be lost in a generation. So there's a little bit of a serious note there, but a lot of it is really storytelling, illustrations, and really uplifting how exceptionally imperfect and yet exceptionally successful and wonderful this country is.
Wow. Amazing. Really amazing. You know, I have to say, this is what I do this for, really, for free. My podcast. I don't get money. I'm not looking for fame. You know, just creating new connection, meeting people like yourself and others who could inspire other people. And I get inspired myself to learn. I learn new things every day. You know, if I haven't approached you and to invite you to come in on my podcast, you know, Entrepreneurs in Tech, and, you know, I wouldn't met you. I wouldn't heard your story. I wouldn't heard about the book that you're going to be publishing soon.
Yeah.
It's just so much, you know, it humbles you down. The more people you meet, you know, I do interviews from people all over the world, from Africa to the Middle East, to Asia, to don't matter what part of the world you're in. You know, we'll work out the hours and I'll do it. You know, and to me, it's always learn. You never stop learning. Never stop learning. And you become more humble and appreciative of the things that you never really appreciated in life. You know, I think we have so much to be thankful for. It doesn't mean that being hungry and being motivated and you want to accomplish certain things in life and goals, it doesn't mean you forget certain things. No, you got to be, in order to get more, you got to appreciate what you have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And time is the most valuable thing in life. And I'm sure you remember every moment of your life. And if you want to go back, you would change certain things because you've been through a rough childhood and a rough life. Yeah.
I have, yeah.
Amazing.
Have.
Well, anything you would like to add? Because this interview has been amazing, and I don't want to hold you too long. And so much information, so much motivation, and inspiring. Really, very inspiring interview. Amazing, Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I just want to say thank you for...
My pleasure.
Thank you for investing your time in having interesting conversations.
Always.
Because it's, you know, we live the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And when we speak to someone with a particular insight, a different angle, you can improve your story, basically.
Yes. And I always say, don't judge others by the way they dress, by the way they, certain cultures. Learn, understand their culture, you know, talk to them. Don't jump into conclusion. Just be more open-minded and learn about other people. And then you'll understand. With time, you'll understand, and you become more respectful and appreciative of a lot of things in life.
That's right.
Well, yes, Kristen, this has been amazing, my friend. Thank you for joining us today on Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Be sure to connect with us on social media. Until next time, keep innovating, think out of the box, stay curious, and any other motivating words, just use it to go forward in life, please.
ChristianRayFlores.com is the place where I post a lot of these ideas for free. So if you want to just get something, a portion of motivation every Sunday in your inbox, just go there and subscribe. It's absolutely free.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks again, Christian. And thanks for our listeners and viewers at Entrepreneurs in Tech. And take care.
Take care.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech podcast. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.